Hello, my name is Frank Donnelly. I'm the Geospatial Data Librarian at Baruch College, City University of New York, and author of the book Exploring the U.S. Census, Your Guide to America's Data. In this screencast, I'm going to demonstrate a particular strategy for navigating data.census.gov, which is the U.S. Census Bureau's new and primary portal for accessing contemporary census data. Data.census.gov is the ultimate place to go if you want to access all of the data tables published in the American Community Survey, the Decennial Census, the Population Estimates Program, the Economic Census, and several other census programs. Now, looks here can be deceiving. We do have this search box, but Google this is not. So when we're doing a search here, we're searching across thousands of data tables and a directory of place names. And while you can certainly do some casual searching and browse around, if you're a serious customer who needs some very specific data, in my opinion, that's not the best way to go. So in this video, I'm going to begin by showing you the advanced search. This will allow you to narrow down the possibilities from dozens of data sets and tens of thousands of tables to just a narrow subset of tables that interest you by limiting the results to a specific data set, time period, set of geographic areas, and a topic. Then you can browse around the results and download what you need. So I'll begin with the advanced search, and once we have that covered, I'll go back and show you how to casually browse around. As we move through the example, I'll briefly mention the difference between the different data sets and the geographies, but I'm not going to go too far afield. The first video in this series is dedicated to explaining the basic census concepts in each of the search components: dataset, time period, topics, and geography. So I suggest that you go back and watch that first video in order to learn the essentials. Okay, so for our example, let's say we're interested in obtaining data about the number of kids enrolled in school for all the counties in Delaware. Since Delaware is a small state, we shouldn't have any problems with the internet grinding away and trying to load tons of records. I'm also from there originally. Go Blue Hens and Blue Rocks. All right, let's begin with the advanced search. To get there, I'll just click Advanced Search. And here are those filters that we're going to start to use to narrow down the possibilities. The first one is that we'll tackle the surveys or the data sets. So, as I mentioned, I covered what all of these were in the first video, but just briefly, where are we going to find school enrollment? Something like that is not going to be in the 10-year decennial census, because the 10-year census just captures basic demographic characteristics of the population and housing units. School enrollment is a more detailed characteristic that's going to be included in the American Community Survey. So we're going to select one of the American Community Survey options. Also, as we talked about in the first video, there are two versions. There's the 1-year ACS and the 5-year ACS. The 1-year ACS is only going to capture places that have at least 65,000 people or more. So in general, if you're trying to capture all the places within another place, chances are many of them will have less than 65,000 people. So if you want to get a complete set, then you're going to look at the 5-year estimates. So the 5-year estimates will contain ACS data for all geographies in the country down to the census tract and census block group level. And they characterize a 5-year period of time instead of just 1 year. And then there are a number of different collections of tables, which is something that we also talked about in the first video. The profiles, there are only 4 of these tables, and they're going to be very broad. They're going to capture a lot of information. The subject tables are kind of in the middle. They're going to be focused on a narrower topic. So there's probably a school enrollment subject table, and that's going to include a lot of basically cross-tabulation. So we'll have school enrollment by race and by age and by sex and by a number of different other things. The detailed tables are the most focused. They are just going to include that one specific variable for this one specific group. So if all we want to know is school enrollment by grade, then the detailed tables are going to be what we're going to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and check that. And by doing this, now we're going to filter out all of the other data sets that are in here. Before I move on though, just if you're curious, if you were looking for 10-year census data, that's going to be down here a little further in the list. That'll be released between the summer and fall of 2021. Alright, but for now we're looking at the 5-year ACS. The next thing, we'll choose our years. We're going to get the most recent data in this case, so I'll check 2018. But remember, if we're working with 5-year American Community Survey data, this data is going to characterize 5 years. So in this case, 2018 would be the last year. So we're looking at basically data that's going to characterize 2014 to 2018. Geography. So we want to get all of the counties in Delaware. So I'm going to select county as my type. And notice we can grab all the counties in the United States, or we can choose a specific state. And now I can also select the counties one by one, or in this case, the easiest thing is I'm just going to grab them all. Now, your ability to select geography within other geographies is going to be constrained by how the geographies nest in the Census Bureau's hierarchy. So, for example, if we were interested in capturing places, which are cities and towns, we wouldn't be able to grab all of the cities and towns, for example, in a particular county, because they don't nest within counties, they nest within a state. So you always have an option of, you'll be able to choose individual places, or you can try and capture them within a broader geographic category. And it's not a problem if you're going to grab more than what you need, because you can just download it and then filter it out later when you go to work with the data in a spreadsheet or a stats package. Alright, so we got that. The topics are probably the fuzzier thing that we have to choose. The others are a little more clear-cut. You kind of just have to experiment. We know that school enrollment is an educational topic, and it just so happens, look at that, we have a category just for school enrollment. And we can be very specific here, or we'll just stick with general old school enrollment. As I've clicked on each of these things, it's added these as filters down at the bottom. And those are our 4 filters. Let's go ahead and search. As you move from the advanced search to this results page, this is basically kind of an interim page that gives you a summary of results. So it'll give us a few tables here that look promising based on what we've selected. So here's school enrollment by level of school for the population 3 years and over. That looks pretty promising. And then there are other options here. We can look at maps, and then there are also some pages related to information about school enrollment. If I want to see the full possibilities in terms of the tables that are returned, though, I can come up here and click on tables, and this is going to show me all of the tables related to school enrollment. So on the left here, school enrollment by level of school for the population 3 years and over. So the universe for this table is the population 3 years and over. So when I look at a total, like here's the total for Newcastle County, that total is not the total population, it's the total number of people in this universe. Because in this case, kids that are younger than 3 years old are probably not going to be in school. And then you can notice here on the left that we have a bunch of other options. This is basically a detailed table which breaks the population down by sex. So we can say male enrolled in public school and then in private school. And then the same for females at the bottom. But let's say that we're interested in this first table because it seems to be the most basic. So we have the number of kids that are enrolled in school, and then broken down at nursery school, kindergarten, 1st to 4th grade, and so on. This is American Community Survey data, so it's going to come in pairs. We have an actual estimate and then a margin of error. So for example, in Newcastle County, there are 9,549 kids enrolled in nursery school, plus or minus 749 kids. So this estimate is basically the midpoint of a range. It could actually be 749 people less than or greater than this number. And the ACS is published at a 90% confidence interval. So we're 90% confident that this is the estimate, but there's a 10% chance that it might not be. Alright, so in this case we kind of lucked out, and this looks like a good table that captures what we're interested in. But we could scroll down here some more and get tables that are a little more specific. And at this point you could also basically search within this to narrow it down a little bit. But if you're interested in downloading this table, what we would do is we would go up here to Customize Table. And you can do some additional like filtering and messing around here, but if you just want to download the table, we can say Download. And CSV files are what we're going to get, so go ahead and download those. sharing your files. Download them now. And we'll go ahead and save them. Alright, and I'm just going to quickly, I'll show you what they look. Depending on your operating system on your computer, you should be able to right click and you'll have some option to unzip the zip file. And then you're always going to get three different files. There's the actual data file, which contains the word data in it. There's a metadata file, and then there's this table file. If I open that up, that basically just gives you some information about this is the table that you downloaded and what's contained in there, and a little bit about how the American Community Survey works. So a CSV file, we can open that up in any spreadsheet package. If you have Excel, I have LibreOffice on this, so we'll open it up in Calc. And we'll go ahead and open it up. So this is what your tables are going to look like when you download them. So you'll have one row for every geography and then one column for every attribute. And you're actually going to have, there's two header rows. One of them has this ID number for the variable, there's the estimate, and there's the margin of error. And then below that is the actual label. And they're long, and you would stick with something that's shorter. The metadata table that we got in addition to this data table, if we open that up, that's basically a reference, and it's going to contain the names of the IDs and then all of the labels. So even if you had to remove the labels from the data, you have the metadata table here, which is basically going to show you what those categories are. And you can also clearly see, I'll just go ahead and open it up, you can clearly see how they're faceted as well, and how the different categories nest within one another. Alright, that is the basics of how, it's a basic roadmap for getting data using the advanced search. Go to advanced search, choose your data set, your year, your geography, and your topic, filter it down, and then you should be in good shape. But if you just wanted to use data.census.gov to casually browse around, you could. I'm just going to refresh the page here for a second, and that way it'll remove my filters and things from before. So if I came into the search box and I just did a search, for example, for Delaware, I immediately can choose an option to get tables for all places in Delaware or all counties in Delaware, or at the top I can get this profile, which is going to show me where Delaware is. It gives me some of the quick facts here at the top. And then I also get a selection of statistics. Here is age and sex and a little bar chart, the number of veterans, the foreign-born population, and I get a little map of that. And then for each one of these statistics, they provide you with a link to the underlying source table. So a lot of the data on the profile pages comes from the data profile tables. These are 4 tables in the ACS, or 1 in the decennial census, that contain a broad array of the most commonly sought variables. So if you quickly wanted to get to that, you can actually just click on this, and then you'd have that demographic profile table. And you can get these profiles, I just put in the state, but you can get them for a particular county or a particular city or town. You can basically just put in there the geography that you want and see if there's a profile. On the other hand, if you were just looking for a topic and you didn't know exactly where you were looking, you could type in, for example, school enrollment. And notice in this case, as I'm typing, it will give me, if that's a topic that's available, it will list it here. It will also give me the specific table names. So this is actually pretty nice. If you know what the table is that you're looking for, you could actually do a known item search by putting in the ID number for the table and then pulling it up. But let's, just for the sake of argument, let's do school enrollment as kind of a general topic. And data.census.gov will give you, this is that interim page again with tables, maps, and pages. It will attempt to predict what are good tables for school enrollment. Here's the summary table, which is a little more, which provides more details actually than the detailed table. It gives us the breakdown for enrollment, but also then we get the population that's enrolled broken down into different age groups. So if that's something that's of interest to us, we can then open up that specific table and look at it. Or we can just come up here and say, let's view all the tables that have something to do with school enrollment. So this is a similar result that we got before, but notice that we didn't put in a geography or anything, so by default the United States is what's getting returned. So we get data for the entire United States. And we're also getting possibilities for, this table is published in all of these years. Now at this point, if we wanted to narrow things down, we could. If we go up to the filter here, this is similar to the filter that we saw in the advanced search. Here, for example, now that if we find some school enrollment tables that we like, at this point we can narrow it down to a specific year. If we want to narrow it down to a specific survey, we can. So for example, if I don't want the subject, maybe I just want subject tables in this case instead of the detailed ones, so I'll choose that. And you notice as I'm making those choices on the left, it's narrowing things down for me on the left. And then for geography, at this point, if I know I want those counties in Delaware, I can select them here. And once I have those options, then I can hide this. And now I have, basically I've done this in reverse now. Instead of doing the advanced search first and then looking at the results, we kind of browse through the tables a little bit more, and once we found something interesting, now we can apply those filters. And this is an example of, there's only the subject tables, there are not as many of them as the detail tables, so there's only one subject table for school enrollment there. And now we can do the same thing. If we hit customize, we can go ahead and download this table. So really, in my opinion, the key to using data.census.gov is to make use of these filters. Don't try and search across the entire spectrum of the millions of tables and dozens of data sets that are in here, but narrow them down to a manageable number. And you should be in good shape. If you're interested in learning more about the census, you can check out my book, Exploring the U.S. Census, Your Guide to America's Data. At these coordinates, this is my blog, and this just has a little page that talks about the census book. Basically, it's a researcher's guide to exploring U.S. Census data. I cover all the main data sets, all the essential topics, and I demonstrate how you can work with the data using a number of different open source tools, QGIS, SQLite, and Calc, the spreadsheet. Also on my blog, I write a lot about the census and about geospatial data in general. If you're interested in learning more about the census, the different census data sets, you could also come in here and do a search. And I have a few posts in here. This is a short article that I wrote that gives you an overview of the different data sets. Exploring U.S. Census data sets. Which ones do you choose? You can go ahead and take a look at that. It's helpful to have some of this background information about what are the data sets and what's contained in them, what are contained in them, so that you can use the data.census.gov a little bit more effectively. Because if you didn't know that school enrollment's only in the ACS, then you would be kind of searching across everything. All right, that's data.census.gov. Hope that was helpful to you. Stay tuned for future videos. I'll show some other resources. All right, so long for now.